To episode 273 of the Bry-Fy podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in on YouTube. Also, everyone who listens to the regular podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcoin, Stitcher Radio, all those great places where you can also catch the Bry-Fy podcast. Thank you guys so much for just being a part of all this, and I really can't keep thanking y'all enough. Also, super thanks to those of you on Patreon who follow the podcast, who also donate as little as $1 a month to the cause of the Bry-Fy. And also, because of that, you guys get a bonus episode every week, and you get a little bit of say on what we talk about in the podcast and on the show. Speaking of which, one of the Patreon followers, Robin, suggested that the comic I reviewed this week is, bam, Captain America by Ed Brubaker. Brubaker, there you go. I can English. I was looking for something to review because I just kind of haven't been really up with anything. I'm still waiting for some of my Marvel stuff to get their new releases out, and he mentioned that I take a look at that. And as I started reading it, I started to realize what character gets introduced in this run. And because I've never read it before, you know, I don't really read Captain America all that much. I just started reading the very new one by Ta-Nehisi Coates, I think that's how you say his name, who had a great run with Black Panther. And so seeing him take over Captain America, I thought would be a really interesting take on the character. So I started reading that. And then I started reading Ed Brubaker's run at the same time, which got really confusing at first. So I had to slow down and gather all my thoughts, write it down on paper, so that way I wasn't mixing storylines there. So if you stay tuned on the podcast, you'll listen to my take on issue number 1 of Captain America back from 2004, and hopefully you guys enjoy that. Other than that, you're here for the Nifty Nerd News part of the Bry-Fy podcast, so let's get into the Nifty Nerd News that we have for this week. Up first for the Nifty Nerd News, it looks like all those hater trolls, all those naysayers, all those people who said it couldn't be done with Captain Marvel, well, they were wrong, obviously. Captain Marvel made all the money, over $100 million in its first weekend. It's made, over $200 million. Sorry, I got my numbers way confused there because my glasses apparently aren't working. So over 700 million worldwide up to this point. It's probably even more since I had these notes down into when I'm recording the podcast, but it just can't quit. Now, to be fair, the ratings for it have been kind of mixed, but mostly positive. I think right now on IMDb it sits at a 7 out of 10. It's got a Metacritic score of about 64 as of last Friday when I looked at it. I think that was March 16th or 15th. I can't remember when I last looked at what the date was. But overall, it's sitting at it. It's a good movie. And from what I've been able to hear from everyone else, because I personally haven't seen it yet, that's just because me and my wife don't like to go watch movies when they first come out because it gets really crowded and you can't focus on anything because everyone's being loud. And when I watch movies, I like to in complete silence, in solitary confinement. That's how I like to watch my movies. But as far as we can tell from people who we trust that review movies, it's good, it's fun, it's entertaining, but it's not the best Marvel movie. And, I mean, I guess that's fair when you've had some pretty high-stakes storylines going on, and you know Captain Marvel falls in between Infinity War and now Endgame. It can have higher stakes, but they can only be so high, you know. So I guess it's kind of this weird middle period, and F Marvel for doing that to Captain Marvel. Hopefully the next Captain Marvel steps it up. But I think about Captain America, the first movie, while fun, wasn't really that great, but then they come out with the Winter Soldier, and that is hands down my favorite Marvel movie. It was just really gripping, really awesome storytelling, and that could happen with Captain Marvel. So I'm super stoked for that, and I'm really excited. I mean, despite that, though, despite it not being the best Marvel movie, it's still making all the money in the world. It's going to make $1 billion, it seems like, at this point. And I mean, honestly, Marvel can just start slapping, Marvel stickers on shit and make millions off of it. That's literally what they're doing now. And unfortunately, it doesn't work for the comic books, but it works for everything else. So we'll see how that goes on moving forward. The second news story, we're going to get a little bit personal. Do you ever have, like, that friend that you see is in a really bad relationship where, like, their significant other is just like, I hate you, I don't want to be with you, we're done, we're through. And then, like, calls them back the next day, like, you know what, I just wasn't in my right place. Come on, let's get back together. I love you. We're meant to be together. And, it's just unhealthy. You want them to get out of it. You want them... Like, despite how they tell you how happy they are to be together, you're just kind of like, it's just gross. You shouldn't be happening. Well, that's what's happening with James Gunn and Disney at the moment, or Marvel. Of course, we've talked about it before on the podcast, where a bunch of old tweets from James Gunn got brought up it was last year. Basically, far-right journalists got pissed off at Gunn because he mouthed off about their holy Lord and Savior, Donald Trump. And so they started digging up these tweets from like 2008, 2009, 2010, like years ago, man, almost a decade ago, where a lot of these tweets were coming from and saying, look, Disney, this is who you hired. What the hell kind of company you trying to run? And they've already gone through this. Like before, when he got signed on to do the Guardians movie, these tweets came up and Disney said, you know what? And I mean, James Gunn apologized for it, said, you know what? It was bad. I did awful jokes. They weren't really that funny. I thought I was being cool edgelord. It turns out I was just lame edgelord, which is kind of like all edgelords. And honestly, after I've looked at the tweets, yeah, they're terrible. They're crap taste. They're just not funny. I can't believe he said those things. They're just wow, but he's apologized for them. He seems to be a different person. If you follow his Twitter recently, it's not the same kind of tweets, it's not the same kind of personality. He says, and he's done a lot for different communities. I'm not saying he's like a super saint now, but he's definitely changed. He's definitely not that same person from 2008, 2009, 2010. James Gunn is new and improved. He's also directing the Suicide Squad and making that new and improved. Well, of course, now Disney has finally recanted all their, like, James Gunn hate, and they've brought him back on to finish Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which was the point I was trying to make 10 minutes ago when I started this news. And it's just crazy that, like, you almost... I mean, I'm not saying they ruined James Gunn's life, because it's not like he didn't have work after that. We just talked about Suicide Squad, which we have been talking about for, like, the last 2 or 3 weeks on the podcast anyway, with all the new stuff that he's doing with Suicide Squad. But it's not like they ruined his life, but, he was doing a really awesome job on Guardians, and all of a sudden they just let the right, like these ultra-conservative journalists, just dictate what they were going to do. And that's kind of crap, A lot of companies do that. A lot of companies are quick on the draw to distance themselves from things without really giving context to stuff, or, like, getting context on these things, If they would have just pumped the brakes a little bit and like, oh, well, we know about this. Like, we've talked about this. Let's just have another presser about this and be like, look, these were from 10 years ago, and look what he's done since then. And not just made us millions of monies, but, like, or billions of monies, but, like, look at all the other things he's done in his personal life and stuff like that to try to right the wrongs, And they didn't do that. They just said, oh, and just bounced out of there. Now they're trying to, slide back into James Gunn's DMs. And, of course, he's going to do it because he loves Guardians of the Galaxy. He loves Dave Bautista. And like, Gunn and Bautista is the greatest romance of our time right now. And I just, it's great. It's fantastic. I love it. I just, kissy. But really cool stuff. Speaking even more of James Gunn, and Suicide Squad, it looks like his Suicide Squad movie is actually been confirmed as a reboot of the series. It's not Suicide Squad 2. The producer from Warner Brothers said, we are calling it the Suicide Squad. So it's like, hey, remember that other one that we had and that seemed to do really well and we were kind of fans of? Well, fuck that. No. we're doing it again, and it's going to be better and awesomer, and there's still going to be Harley Quinn. There will probably still be Joker, but now we have King Shark and Idris Elba as Deadshot. Yeah, that's another thing. It's like been all but confirmed, I think, that Idris Elba is taking over Will Smith's role as Deadshot. And it's not that they rather have him over the other, because let's face it, he was awesome as Heimdall. So yeah, we should have him. But I think a lot of it had to do with Smith's scheduling. He couldn't make the schedule for the new Suicide Squad movie, and so he had to drop out. But I mean, are we missing much? I'm a big fan of Will Smith because I like Will Smith. I like that he does the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in every movie that he does. And even looking at the new Aladdin trailer, he definitely is freshening it up. And I love that because, I mean, that's what I expect, you know? Like Woody Harrelson, you know, you expect a certain thing out of him and you get that. And so, you know, there's just certain actors you go in knowing, hey, I'm going to get some Matthew McConaughey in this. And that's all right. I'm so sorry for doing that. Yeah, but that was just kind of the new stuff that I wanted to go over this week. Nothing super huge, super awesome. Just some things I want to update you about with, of course, Captain Marvel ruling the planet, making all the monies in the world. James Gunn back into his Guardian's throne where he belongs for now until Disney, you know, I don't know, goes through their Menzies or their Disneys, Demenzies, and gets rid of them again. And then, of course, Suicide Squad being the Suicide Squad and being better than the Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad will be better than Suicide Squad because Deadshot is not Deadshot. But Harley Quinn is still Harley Quinn. And there's going to be King Shark. And that's all I really got for you this week. So head on over to Podbean, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Podcoin, any other podcatcher app that you might listen to, and listen to my review of issue number 1 of Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America. But we're done here on YouTube. I will chat with you guys later. Bry-Fy not out. But let's listen. Let's segue.